The story begins with a scene where several people are trying to enter an office building, and a man is about to commit suicide. But the real question is, who is this man, and why does he want to take his own life? This man is none other than Eddie Mora, a failed writer who had signed a contract to finish a book. But despite all his efforts, he couldn't write or finish that book. At the same time, his girlfriend Lindy breaks up with him. Eddie, heartbroken and lost, wanders the streets until suddenly, he runs into his ex-brother-in-law, Vernon.
Eddie Mora!
Of all the useless relationships better forgotten and put away in mothballs, is there any more useless than the ex-brother-in-law?
Vernon invites Eddie for a drink. He asks Eddie about his book, and it turns out Eddie hasn't even written a single word.
I'm behind on my book, and it's pretty well polluting my days and nights if you really want to know.
Well, how much have you written of it?
Not one word.
Vernon tells him, I have the solution to your problem. A clear pill, something that gives a person the ability to use 100% of their brain. Vernon gives Eddie one pill and his business card, then leaves. Eddie stares at the pill. On his way home, he thinks to himself he has nothing left to lose. He swallows the pill Vernon gave him. As he climbs the stairs, suddenly he feels something explode in his mind. Yes, the pill has begun to work. Eddie sees and hears everything with heightened clarity.
I was blind, but now I see.
When he enters his messy apartment, his brain rejects the disorder. He starts cleaning the room.
It's prevailed.
Then sits down and begins writing. It's unbelievable, words are raining into Eddie's mind. The next morning, there's no trace of that brilliance or talent. Eddie goes back to Vernon's to get more pills, only to find him beaten and bloody. He asks about the name of the pill.
What's it called?
Vernon says it doesn't have a brand name, but in the kitchen, they called it NZT-48. Vernon sends Eddie out to get dry cleaning and food.
The dry cleaners grab my soup for me. And maybe grab a little breakfast for us.
But when Eddie returns, he finds the apartment trashed and Vernon murdered. He calls the police.
I need to report a murder?
But before they arrive, he begins searching for the pills. Eventually, he finds them hidden inside the oven, along with some cash. The police question him briefly and then let him go. Back home, Eddie begins using the pills.
What would you do?
Alright, I must explain. Any of these thoughts racing through my brain.
The combination of Vernon's money and the new NZT stash transforms Eddie into a superhuman. The book he couldn't even begin, he finishes in 4 days. He learns to play piano in 3. In poker, he's unbeatable. He masters foreign languages in just hours. Suddenly, Eddie knows everything. He makes new friends, people who invite him to exotic parties around the world. He does things no one else would dare, speeding through the streets. Cliff diving into the ocean.
Oh my God!
Eddie realizes writing isn't his true passion. His real goal is something much bigger. Using the NZT and Vernon's leftover cash, Eddie starts investing in the stock market. But he doesn't have enough capital. The profits are too small. And Eddie doesn't have much time. To get more money, he turns to the Russian mafia, borrowing $100,000 in a short-term, high-interest loan. With that capital, he dives into the stock market and within 1 week, turns it into $2 million. Eddie becomes a sensation in the financial world. A powerful investor named Carl Van Loon becomes eager to meet him.
Up to my boss, and well, the impossible happened, bud. We got you a meeting with Carl Van Loon.
Eddie's life is now flawless. Even Lindy, who once left him, comes back into his life. Everything is going great until the side effects of the pills begin. The next morning, Eddie has a meeting with Van Loon. Using all the accumulated knowledge from NZT, he completely impresses Van Loon. They set another meeting for the next day.
All right, you get your shot. Meet me tomorrow at the St. Regis at 10 and tell me how the gutsy little schmuck needs a ride homeward.
Eddie wonders how far can he go with these new abilities? But he forgets about the side effects. His time lapses worsen. He finds himself in places he has no memory of visiting. From one location to another, until 24 hours pass and the pill's effects wear off. Eddie realizes he doesn't remember anything from the last 18 hours. At his next meeting with Van Loon, he has nothing to say. Van Loon asks about his rival Atwood, a man who was unknown just 2 years ago and is now a major threat. At that moment, Eddie hears on the news that a young woman has been murdered in the hotel where Eddie had stayed the night before. Panicked, he rushes home. He grabs Vernon's notebook and starts calling his former clients.
Please speak with Jerry Brady.
Jerry's in the hospital.
Yeah, hello, it's Paul Kaplan there.
No, he's not. Paul passed away.
He discovers that most of them are either dead or in critical condition. As he calls one of them, the man sitting next to him answers his phone. Eddie realizes he's being followed and barely escapes. He visits his ex-wife, Melissa, and asks if she knows anything about the pill. There, he learns that Melissa herself used NZT for a while. She warns Eddie about the severe side effects, brutal headaches, mental breakdowns, and lost time. She pleads with him to quit while he still can. Eddie returns home, but before entering, the Russian loan shark who lent him money ambushes him. After a brief argument, the Russian notices the pill. He grabs it and swallows it, shocked by the effects. After dealing with the Russian, Eddie suffers a terrible headache on the way back. Barely holding himself together, he makes it to Lindy's office, asking her to retrieve his pills from his apartment. Lindy goes to Eddie's apartment and finds the pills. But on her way back, she realizes someone is following her. The stalker attacks her taxi, but she escapes. She asks 2 bystanders for help, but the man chasing her kills them both with a knife.
Are you deaf? I said leave her alone. Hey, buddy, are you trying to piss me off?
What are you doing, man?
Terrified, Lindy hides behind a rock and calls Eddie, asking for a solution. Eddie tells her to take one of the pills and wait 30 seconds, then she'll be able to escape. Lindy does as he says. Moments later, her perception sharpens. She sees everything in detail and runs. She escapes the attacker and returns the pills to Eddie. They hide in a hotel. The next morning, Lindy begs Eddie to stop using the pills. Eddie promises, once he finishes everything, he'll quit. But there's one thing he didn't predict: the Russian loan shark, now also addicted, is waiting outside the hotel. He demands more pills.
More of that stuff. When I shoot you right here, take your pick.
Eddie gives him a few to buy time. He hires personal bodyguards, prepares for the next stage. He presents his grand plan to Van Loon and lands a job at one of the largest investment firms. He even sews hidden pockets into all his suits in case he ever runs out of NZT. He's trying to reproduce the pill.
You need 12 to 18 months.
I'll give you $2 million if you can do it in 6.
Eddie becomes one of the most successful traders on Wall Street. But the police still suspect him in the hotel girl's murder. Expensive lawyers keep him out of jail. In a tense meeting with Van Loon and Atwood, Eddie uses his brilliance to turn everything in Van Loon's favor. Van Loon, fearful of Eddie's power, threatens him. Compete with anyone you want, just don't make me your rival.
Because you haven't competed, don't make me your competition.
Back at the hotel, Eddie finds his suite has been trashed. Someone is looking for something. To stay safe, he buys a high-security apartment worth $8.5 million.
Price?
8.5.
I'll take it.
But the Russian shark still wants more pills. Apparently, the NZT works very well on him too. On the day of a big contract signing, Atwood doesn't show up. His wife comes instead and says he's in the hospital and will complete the deal once he recovers. But Eddie notices something strange. Her driver is the same man who chased Lindy. He realizes Atwood was also using NZT, and now that he's out of supply, he's dying. Eddie goes to the police for the murder case. He's placed in a lineup of 5 men, but the witness can't identify him. Back at his office, Van Loon is furious. Atwood is in a coma. Eddie feels it's time for another pill. He enters the bathroom, but the pills are gone. Who took them? The lawyer? The police? A package arrives. Inside are the severed hands of his bodyguards. Eddie rushes out. On the evening news, he discovers his lawyer was working for Atwood and he had stolen the pills. But that's not his only problem. The Russian and his men are at Eddie's apartment, ready to break in. Eddie, terrified, considers suicide. It seems less painful than torture. But his survival instinct won't let him quit. The Russians break in. Their leader tells Eddie he doesn't appreciate the pill's value. He claims to dissolve it into liquid and inject it, longer lasting, more potent. He injects the last pill. As they ransack the apartment, the leader approaches to torture Eddie. But Eddie stabs him with a hidden knife, kills him. But he's weak. He hasn't taken a pill. He notices the NZT-infused blood on the floor. Desperate, he drinks the blood. His mind reignites. Eddie kills the last 2 men, barely escaping. With Atwood now dead, Eddie realizes the lawyer stole the pills for himself. Eddie teams up with Atwood's former driver to confront the lawyer. They retrieve the stolen pills. 12 months later. A campaign rally. Crowds cheer. The man behind the podium is none other than Senator Edward Mora. People line up just to shake his hand or donate to his campaign. He enters his office. Someone is waiting. Carl Van Loon. Now the owner of the NZT production lab. He knows Eddie's secret and threatens to cut the supply unless Eddie complies. Eddie declines. Someone with my intelligence has solved NZT's problems. I no longer take it. He warns Van Loon not to cross him. He has evidence of all his crimes. He touches Van Loon's chest. You should get that heart condition checked. Later, Eddie goes to lunch with Lindy. He speaks fluent Chinese with the waiter.
围巾会保护你的衣服。
可是会把我当脏做啊。
Lindy stares, stunned. But the final question remains. Did Eddie really stop using NZT? Or is he just playing the game better than ever?